Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the seventh instalment and final instalment of the free lockdown webinar series for professional development for kinesiologists and other health practitioners and complementary health practitioners. So I'd like to welcome you all. First of all, I'd like to thank you for participating, and I hope you've got some information and learning out of the previous 6 webinars. Tonight, I'm going to do something called the modern magic of the Meridian system. So this is going to be about, I've got a few things. I mean, there's a little bit of stuff out of principles of kinesiology and the balancing with the 5 elements and some other things. And I'm going to look at, things like emotion, 5 elements, and also thinking about how we can use it in the modern world today, because a lot of the stuff to do with the 5 elements was written many years ago in the, thousands of years ago in China. And it was very interesting, the experience I had when I was writing my course, The Principles of Kinesiology, which is a beginner's course. And, it's something different for me to do that, because most people who know me and have done a lot of training with me and understand, I can see from who's online, and I recognise quite a few people there that have trained with me. And of course, I recognise there's people that haven't. But what I am more known for is doing the advanced training, and they wheel me out in Germany every year and other places in the world to train their advanced students and with my latest things. So to go back and do some stuff that's more more to do with the underlying core principles of kinesiology, because I'm not going to say and devalue it and say that it's not advanced or it's not important. It's just part of the underlying principles of kinesiology that underpin it. And that's why I called the course The Principles of Kinesiology. That was the whole idea of the course. And because, like kinesiology was first founded by, or first started with George Goodhart, who was a chiropractor working in the United States, and he connected a muscle test, which came from the physiotherapists Kendall and Kendall, to Chinese medicine, and he started making all these connections between meridians, and then there was the Chapman and Bennett reflexes and other things. So these were important fundamental principles of kinesiology. So what I did when I wrote the course, I had to unlearn everything I learned and then go to the principles, or to the closest thing I could find. Like I couldn't read all the ancient Chinese texts out there. I couldn't read what this says or what that says. What I could do was read people who wrote about what was in the ancient texts. It was kind of interesting, because the first thing I learned about was the 5 elements. And I was very surprised to find that the colours of the 5 elements in the ancient Chinese texts are not what we use today. And certainly the green of wood and the red of fire and the yellow of earth element were the same, but metal was white and water was black, and where we know them as grey and blue. And when I searched back through all what I could find, these colours of what we know in Touch for Health in most schools of kinesiology only actually appeared last century. And before that, there was no mention of blue for water. It was black for water. And whenever they had an emperor in ancient China, all the sages would gather and they would look at the whatever the underlying signs were for that emperor, and they would decide what element that emperor was like. And that's why you had the yellow emperor, because his reign had the earth element, and if it was water, they would be the black so everyone would wear black, or the army, or the uniform of everyone would be black, or if it was the yellow emperor, it would be yellow. And this was the kind of thing they were talking about. And what was interesting about that is that the translation of the word from 5 elements, and the other words they used for it, the houses, and that was like because of they used it for the houses of government, and also the qualities. And so for me, when we understand what the 5 elements are, what we're understanding is they're really 5 qualities. And I prefer to look at them as 5 qualities instead of calling them 5 elements. And sometimes the translations into English and other Western languages is a little bit unfortunate, because when we use the word element, people say, well, you know, there's over 100 elements in the periodic table. What are you talking about? And then they kind of use that as an excuse to talk down the knowledge from the ancient medicine systems from Europe, where they had 4 elements, and in India as well, and also in China with the 5 elements. And so I like to look at as the 5 qualities. And so when you're understanding them as different qualities, so when the yellow emperor was born, or when he took power, there was all these big grubs coming out of the ground. Everything the sages got the sign was of the earth element. So the quality of his reign was the earth element, and his houses of government were the earth element. And so this is where the translation, sometimes I know Richard Utt had that course, 5 Houses of Chi, and, lots of people have got courses, and you do it in basic touch for health. Obviously in my work in principles of kinesiology and the course Balancing with 5 Elements, we look at it. And in other schools, modalities around the world, and Chinese medicine, all called the 5 Elements. But I think it helps to understand if we refer to it as the 5 qualities, or think of it as that. Every time you work with the 5 elements, think of which quality is this, okay? And therefore you have, these were the colours from the ancient Chinese texts. And so that's why in my courses, Principles of Kinesiology and Balancing with the 5 Elements, I use these colours, and I don't use the other ones, because, as I said, when I started writing the course, I had to unlearn everything I knew and say, okay, I'm not listening to what everyone else wrote, and I'm not discounting it. I'm not saying it's wrong. We've got a lot to owe to George Goodhart and John T with Touch for Health. I'm forever ever grateful for those 2 men, because, none of us would be here if it wasn't for them. And then for me, of course, I went into the Applied Physiology line with Richard Utt and then later Charles Krebs, and they were the influences on me. But of course, there's other branches of it. So that's what's interesting about it. So anyway, and so using these are indicator points. I developed it really just from the 5 element naval mode, which I just learnt that as a student. But in Chinese medicine, they've got two flows of energy, or 2 cycles, they're called, actually. These are the cycles when the element qualities, or the 5 qualities, are in harmony. There are actually other cycles when there's no harmony. There's one that goes this way, it's called the insulting cycle. Like wood will insult metal, will insult fire. And so there's these different cycles that are known that are pathological. But these are the in harmony ones. So when the 5 elements are in harmony, they have this flow. This is called the Shen cycle. And this one here is called the Ko cycle, or the controlling cycle. And the Shen cycle is interesting. I read a lot. I don't know if any of you know the works of Giovanni Macchioccia from this amazing teacher and book writer in Chinese medicine, still running around the world today. Well, he's probably not running around the world at the moment, but he's still, you know, every now and again I see him pop up somewhere teaching, but his knowledge and his books, the fundamentals of Chinese medicine, is just incredible. And they've got all these things where you've got the pathological flows. And it was interesting because what he says is the Shen cycle is what the cycle to use when you're sedating and tonifying, and not the Ko cycle, because the Shen cycle is the feeding cycle. And so what I wanted to do, oh my God, he passed away. Okay, someone's just messaged me that he passed away. Okay, it must have been fairly recent, but anyway. He certainly was a giant in complementary health, and I would certainly recommend any of his books if people want to really get into and understand the depths of it. His books are quite incredible. And so you can see here, you've got here the Shen cycle. So the Shen cycle is the feeding cycle. So what I wanted to do is something a little bit different. It's a little bit similar to what's in the Balancing with the 5 Elements course, but I've made it a bit different, and it's just a teaser from what's in that course. And so we're going to look at and I'm doing this for one emotion of each of the 5 qualities. So, you know, you could do this for every one of the emotions, but it's a kind of an interesting thing. So they're the finger modes. The 5 element that's the Meridian mode. I think it's the Richard Utt version, and Meridian mode light touches 5 elements. Okay, and so you would hold it light touch and with emotion. And so what I would do is then I would do these indicator points, light touch and deep touch, to tell me if that emotion is under and over energy. Because one thing I realized, and this is certainly something I've done with the chakras, and I think I probably talked about it when I did the psychology of the chakra webinar, is the imbalanced state of a meridian, a chakra, or even an element can be under energy or over energy. And we know that each meridian, chakra, element has emotions to it, but understanding that the emotions, under energy emotions and over energy emotions, are very different. And of course you've got the balanced state as well, the feeling of or emotion of how it would be when it's balanced. So what I've done here in this table, and if yesterday you would have got this to download. These are just one of the emotions I've got from each of the elements. These are the ones I have, and there's other people will have different ones, but you can apply the same principle. So fire is about love, right? So that's one of them, love. So when love is under energy, you feel loveless. Loveless. If it's over energy, it's hate. I hate you, you know. One of my teachers used to say, when everyone used to say hate, she'd have this list of emotions, and she'd say, hate is a misplaced expression of love. I'll never forget that. Denise, bless her, she's up there somewhere. And so when the fire element is over energy, you experience hatred. And when it's under energy, you're just like loveless. When it's balanced, you're in love. You love yourself. You're open to love with other people. Just you experience that. Okay. So it's very important to understand the actual the relationship between a balanced emotion or the balanced feeling, or we call it an emotion, right? Under energy and over energy. So they're both states, imbalanced states of love, loveless and hatred. Earth is healthy boundaries, you know. And under energy, it means you can't set your own boundaries. You let people in, you know, that's when you have an under energy of the earth quality in you, you can't set your own boundary. You know, you're the people pleaser, the martyr, the caregiver, and all this kind of thing. You just do all, you know, and people can invade you, they take advantage of you and everything like that. And then later on, you'll you might go into a bit of over energy fire, and you get all this hatred come up within you because you're just annoyed with yourself, really, because I hate myself because I can't set my own boundaries. So you have a over energy motion, under energy. And over energy is you invade other people's boundaries. You know, like it's that, you know, you can see there's a lot of you can see in that the solar plexus chakra, you know. Metal is, of course, so the earth element's also things, it's about that initial bond between the mother and child when they're first born and everything like it's very earth, and then it should transition into metal. And metal is when you've got, you know, this is about social bonding and things like this, and friendship. So it's a very important part of the metal element because that is social bonding. And so you'll have, you won't be able to, so when it's under it, so when it's balanced, you have healthy friendships, you know, you love yourself, you can express healthy boundaries, and you can have healthy friendships as well. When it's under energy, when metal is under energy, it's when you feel alone. You know, you're sad, you're lonely. And a lot of people would be having this at the moment because, you know, when everyone's been in lockdown, when everyone's been in lockdown in this time, we haven't been able to socialise, which is the metal element. So the metal quality of our life we haven't been able to do that kind of connection. And so we might feel a bit lonely. You might be feeling isolated. You know, we're even told we have to isolate. We have to socially isolate. Even when we go out, we can't, like, you know, I go to the farmer's market and you have to all line up, and, you know, or you're only allowed so many people in a restaurant now, or something like this. It's awful. When it's over energy, it's manipulative, and so that's when you have manipulative friends. You know, your friendship. They're not real friendships, of course. It's just really it's a manipulative friendship where they're always getting the other hand. You know, they probably invade your boundaries, and you bloody well hate them subconsciously. You know what I mean? Water is about emotion. You know, it's really the element of emotion. So when it's balanced, you're emotionally accessible, and your emotions are in balance. When it's under energy, you're emotionally inaccessible. That means you can't share, or you can't express your emotions, or, you know, you just really, or you might feel numb emotionally, that you just don't experience it. It's kind of shut down. You see this a lot of under energy and water. I've found it's people in trauma have this. They're really shut down, and that you'll find under energy in the water element. And when it's over energy in the water element, that's when they're emotionally dominant. That's where they're, you know, very, you know, the kind of extroverted emotional person that, you know, whatever their emotion is, they dominate, or everyone feels it and stuff like that. And the wood, well, we know wood's about rage. You know, excessive rage and resentment is when it's over energy. When it's balanced, it's actually being assertive. But when I say that, I mean you're being assertive in a good way. You can really, you know, you can say what you need to say, or push a point when you should, you know, instead of just going, oh, well, it doesn't matter, you know. Oh, I'll miss out on that. Doesn't matter. Under energy, it's really passive. You know, it's this passive state where you're not really, you know, there's no kind of excitement. There's nothing like that, but no wood energy. And when it's over energy, you've got the excessive rage and resentment. You resent that person. That's not hatred. But I'll show you something really interesting. When I was writing this, I thought, oh, this is so cool. So I've managed to put some stuff in there that's a little bit different to what I've had, you know. So when these are basically the formats for these emotions for the element state. So it's meridian mode, light touch, times emotion mode, which means you do them at the same time, plus central vessel 9 deep touch, because they're the kind of indicator points that came from the 5 element mode, which is kidney 15, 16 and central vessel 9. And you can see left and right, and that's on the left and right on the client's body, not your left and right when you look at your client. No. And so this is basically the format, and this is the element state, and this is these emotions from the other page there. So I just thought that's kind of useful if you like to work with the 5 elements. It just gives you some little extra, you know, because you do. I mean, they are the 5 element motion charts and people like that. But you know what? I'm just trying to put in my, as we would say here in Aussie, my 2 bob worth. Okay. So then what I thought, what about, because, Macchiocci used to say, when you're looking at tonifying and sedating, so what you could do, you would treat this with the emotions, which I'll show, with the acupoints, right? And so that means you have to, if the fire is, fire is under energy. So you could use it by tonifying any of the fire meridians, or if fire is over energy, you would need to sedate. Okay. So this is the over energy emotional Shen cycle. Okay, so this is not in principles of, or the 5 elements. And so I mention it though, but I have never written it down before. So this is when, if we look back here at the Shen cycle, fire feeds earth, feeds metal, feeds water, feeds wood, feeds fire, and that's the cycle. Keeps going. It's the feeding cycle. It supports, it nourishes, one gives rise to the other. So if we look at the over energy emotions, so this is the over energy emotional Shen cycle. So hate feeds invading others' boundaries. And so you might want to look at that Shen cycle. So hate is over energy, and fire invading other boundaries is over energy in earth. And then invading boundaries feeds manipulative friendships, which is over energy metal. And that feeds emotional dominance, which is over energy water, which feeds excessive resentment and rage, which is over energy wood, which feeds excessive rage, resentment feeds hate. And we see that in the world, right? And so that's the actual, the Shen cycle of the over energy emotions. And that's kind of an interesting way to look at that. And I'm going to show you something that's not written down. And this is how you can test which one of those. So if you go back to these, I showed you this format here. You put these modes on. Then you go over here. So if you did kidney 16 left and CV9 at the same time, that's these 2 indicator points at the same time. That is wood feeding fire for the Shen cycle. If you do these 2 at the same time, that would be fire feeding earth. And if you do these 2 at the same time, that'll be earth feeding metal. If you do these 2 at the same time, that'll be metal feeding water. And if you do these 2 at the same time, that'll be water feeding wood. So when we're using these, we would use the 5 element mode times 5 element mode times the emotion. Then you would do CV9 for fire and kidney 16 on the left for earth. So if you did those, you would have this one. But you would have to do them light touch for over energy, right? Because that's light touch is over energy and deep touch is under energy. Then this is the under energy emotional Shen cycle. So loveless. So it feeds, you can't set your own boundaries. Fire to earth. Can't set own boundaries feeds loneliness. You feel alone if you can't set your own boundaries. That's earth to metal. Loneliness feeds emotional inaccessibility. That is metal to water. Emotional inaccessibility feeds passiveness. That is water to wood. And passiveness feeds lovelessness. That is wood to fire. Okay. And so then you've also got the balanced emotional Shen cycle. Why not have a balanced one? We're always looking at imbalance. Why can't we have balanced? You know, and you can use these, right? So love feeds healthy boundaries. Healthy boundary feeds friendship, and friendship feeds emotional accessibility, and emotional accessibility feeds assertiveness. Assertiveness feeds love, and around it keeps going again. Now, wouldn't that be a nice way to live in that kind of balanced emotional Shen cycle state? And so again, all of these you can test, you know, by using these modes. And then when you want to test the imbalances, if you test 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2, if you do it light touch, it'll be over energy, or if you test some deep touch, it'll be under energy. And if you're not sure about that, it's on here, under energies. So all the under energies are deep touch, and all the over energies are light touch. And that's not me. That came, Richard Utt used to do it, and I think, I don't know where he got it from. It came from somewhere, but I use it a lot because I think it's really important when you're analysing imbalances. You've got to look, under and over energy are completely different. The behaviour, the emotion, everything is completely different. And when you understand that, when you look at the way someone's behaving in a certain situation, you can actually start predicting what imbalances they would have. And, you know, that could be meridian imbalances, element imbalances, or even chakra imbalances are all the same. You can predict them from the way they're behaving. Okay, so these are the 5 element command points. These are from Matt Giocha. I just adapted this table from what he writes, and he writes all about the wellspring and stream and river and blah, blah, blah. And so over here you've got, and they're coloured by the element. Oh, the Russian hackers. Anyway, so you know, like lung 11 is wood, lung 10 is fire, lung 9 is earth, lung 8 is metal, and lung 5 is water. And then the source point is lung 9. That's where the Jing comes in, or the Yuan Qi. The low point is where you connect with the large intestine meridian, and there's the accumulation point, which is where, if there's excess energy, it's where it tends to accumulate. So you always activate the accumulation point to sedate. So understanding that, what I did was I would give the emotional acupoint corrections. And so these are the same order. So what you've got here, so my idea is when we're correcting, say, so I'll go back to that. So when we're correcting this pit here from fire to earth, right? So what we'll do when we want to correct this, we can like do the earth command points of the fire meridians and the fire command point of the earth meridians. So when we come back and look at this. So stomach is earth, so the fire point is stomach 41, and spleen, the fire point is stomach 2. And for the fire meridians, which heart, we've got the earth points, heart 7, small intestine 8, pericardium 7, triple heater 10. So you'll see those points here. Put the yin ones and then the yang ones. So you do all the yin ones if you can together, and do all the yang ones to, you know, yin and yang, Shen cycle flow. And so these are the, you know, spleen 5's the metal point of spleen, and lung 9's the earth point of lung, and same here. And here you've got lung 5 is the water point of lung, and kidney 7's the metal point. So this is the kidney to metal. And then here you've got kidney 1 is the wood point of kidney, and liver 8 is the water point of liver. And then down here you've got wood to fire. So again, you've got 6 points here because there's the 2 fire meridians, or 2 pairs of fire meridians. So liver 2's the fire point, and heart 9 and pericardium 9 are the wood points of those respective meridians. So that gives you an idea of how you can work with the emotional cycles of the 5 elements, whether it's balanced, under energy, or over energy. And so I've given you some correction points there. And you can, if you want to actually use it, you might like to type it up nicely or something. You can do something with it. You've got the thing, but, you know, you would have the, you know, these, they're in the same order as these. So whichever one shows, you can just, you know, go to that page. If the first line shows, go to the first page and just test which acupoints, however you like to work with acupoints, whether it's, you know, with a Tai Shin. I like to hold them, or you can put oils on them, or, I mean, I've got even a set of tuning forks. You put the end on them and you can vibrate the tuning fork into the point. You know, there's so many different ways. You can put sound, colour light, could do colour puncture. Whatever it is you like to do, you can do that. So that's kind of some different ideas to work with the 5 elements. I know it's, for me, it hasn't been easy to write stuff about this, because so much of it's been done before, and just to find something that's a little bit different wasn't easy. Looking at the meridians, we all know the meridian wheel, and I'm not going to go into such detail of that here, but you know, we're aware of the wheel as how chi flows through the meridians, and certainly I've got some things with that, and I've got a chi formation balance and all this kind of thing, and the meridian shows how energy flows through the meridians. And so I've got this idea, right? And this is another idea. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I think it was a bit much for a webinar, but it's certainly interesting. And if you want to get the full ideas, you just can, you know, you can get the book Balancing with the 5 Elements. Has got where they're all in there. You can buy that online. You don't have to do the workshop. Here's a workshop. Anyway, these are the alarm points. So, which you're all probably aware of. So this is understanding under energy. So imagine if our cup was full, that's the balanced energy state. That's the normal energy. So normally when we say under energy, it's like this, right? We say, oh, this is it's under energy, it's under tonified. I need to tonify it, and so I can raise the energy up. Okay. That's what we would normally say. That's our normal model of working with meridians, right? And with the same with anything, but certainly with the meridians, because we have, when we work with meridians, we have the tonification and sedation points. And, certainly like, the accumulation point will sedate, the low point will sedate, but it will tonify its yin yang pair. The yuan point, or the yuan point that's where the original chi comes in. So that's where the that'll tonify. And then Machocha says you tonify through the Shen cycle. So if you want to tonify an earth meridian, say spleen, you would fire tonifies earth, so you'd tonify through the fire point. But then it goes from earth goes around to metal, you would sedate through the metal point. Okay, because that pushes the energy around through to metal. So that's what Machocha says. So that's how we use it. That's how I developed in principles of kinesiology. They were the tonification and sedation points I used, because that's what they said. I know other people have different ones, and they've done their own research, and I'm not discounting that. That's what I like. Anyway, but then I got this other idea, and this kind of blows your mind, and I'll explain how it works. So imagine if it's normal energy, but under energy comes from over sedating. So it's not under tonified, but it's over sedated. What does that mean? It means we would treat the under energy with a sedation point. And that kind of blew my mind when I first came up with that. I'm like, what? And yep, we would treat the under energy with a sedation point if it is over sedated. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Well, that's going to be a little bit controversial, I think. But anyway, whatever. And that's why, and you could do that with the under and over by testing, if it's over sedated, you just test the sedation point light touch. And if that shows, that means it's over sedated. And when you're looking for under tonified, you would test the tonification point deep touch. And it's the same with over energy too. Over energy could be either over tonified or under sedated. So something's over tonified, we're actually make it over energy, but we would treat it with a sedation point, it's not going to work. We'd actually have to treat it with the tonification point and tone it down. The tone, bring back the tonification to let it come back to its normal state. So that's kind of my idea of the working with the meridians. I'm not going into all that. Certainly if you want to have more information, you can look for the balancing with the 5 elements, where I've got all the details in there. This is kind of interesting. I just wanted to share this, and this is again, I developed this from reading Machocha's book in the way I understand it. Now, it might be, how I understand things is always different. I have my own view. So I'm not, I certainly don't say that, I could be wrong. I could have misunderstood things and stuff like this. So it's kind of interesting though. So this is what he calls the post-heaven essence, which means this is the essence that's formed in us after we're born, and it actually starts in the stomach from the food, and so this is the stomach, and then it passes to spleen, where it becomes food chi, or guchi as he calls it, and so this actually is really the earth element, and this is why eating good quality food, every Wednesday morning I like it's 7 o'clock in the morning. Normally I was down there 7 o'clock this morning, today's Wednesday, down to the farmer's market, you know, the local organic veggies are just, you know, there's one there I've decided I just love their veggies because every time you go to their veggie stand, it's like they're alive. And it's you can see like all the eggplants there. It's like they're hanging out, talking to each other. They're so alive, and they the capsicums and the zucchinis and stuff, and it's like, oh, I just go there and buy all those things, and that's what I cook, you know, because they're so vital. And this is what they have, has this vital energy coming from your food. And so but then it passes to the lung meridian, and this is where it gets air, you know. I call it air chi, but you know, it's not, he doesn't call it like that, but he says it gets air. And that's why in Chinese medicine, they say chi flow begins in the lungs. And so this then, now, so this means we need to be eating vital food, breathing good, clean air. That's important, because if we do that, we get a lot of our chi from our environment, and this then becomes gathering chi. And I'll talk about this up here. But if it's deficient, we have to use this, which I'll talk about in a minute. So the gathering chi then becomes true chi once it's been tonified here by the original chi or the yuan chi through the yuan points it comes. And the true chi comes into two parts. You've got the defensive chi, which is called the wei chi, and nutritive chi, which is the yin chi. The defensive chi is our defense against the pathogenic factors. So but it's also, so it's really like our energetic immune system, I call it, but it's also about how we interact with the external world, you know. So when it's all balanced, we have a good interaction with the external world, and we also stay very healthy. I mean, I think at the moment with all the lockdowns and everything, you know, people are not interacting so well with the external world. It's very difficult. Where this one here, the nutritive chi, and this one over here, it runs in your muscle meridians, your connecting channels or load channels, or superficial connecting channels or cutaneous regions. They're really small, little tiny ones. I reckon they're what the figure eights are. And then over here, you've got your nutritive chi. So this is your 12 main meridians, divergent channels and deep connecting channels. And they're the ones that take the chi down into your body, where you feed the chi to all your organs and glands and muscles and your bones and da-di-da. So this is a bit like your energetic digestive system, because it's giving you the nutrition you need, but the energetic, the chi nutrition. Okay. So, so you can imagine with this, if So you can imagine if we're living in a polluted city eating microwave food, how would that sound? How much chi are we going to get out of these TV dinners, you know? You know, recently I spent a lot of time with my father before he passed, and he was talking about his time in the early 60s when he went to school in Boston in the United States, where I was born actually, and while he went to school there. And he's saying, so with this, and he was speaking in Spanish, and so it's my second language. I couldn't understand what he was saying. Then I realised he was saying every night he had a TV dinner. And I'm thinking, you had a TV dinner? I go, that's bloody, you know, a TV dinner's got no food chi in it. You know, it's not like going to the market and getting you know, like even at the farmer's market, we've got a butcher that butchers his own food, and we just nearby, we have a fishing fleet, so we get fresh fish. So it's all really fresh, clean food, and that's going to feed you and nourish you. And he's at one of the top universities in the world using all that brain power eating TV dinners. I'm thinking, man, you're even smarter than I thought. Of course, I didn't tell him that, you know. He's up there now, probably listening, but whatever. Oh, God. Okay. And so these, so So these things need to be good. It's really important. Good quality food, good quality air. And I live in the country and it's raining, but the air's fresh. And my favorite sort of hobby is skiing. And I love to be on top of a mountain when it's all snow and fresh air, and you just breathe it in. It's just an amazing feeling, you know, when you have that really fresh, clean air and good quality food. You're really nourishing yourself. If it is deficient, then's where this comes in. And so this is the yin and yang essence of the mother and the yang essence of the father. So this comes from the sperm and the ova. I think this is my theory, it's mine, is that this is your Ida and Pingala. Because when you get the first cell, and I'm going to talk about this in the extended lockdown series. My first talk is going to be about the placenta chakra and conception. So I'll go into more detail about this. But when you've got this, you know, I think this is Ida and Pingala, and the conception essence of the fetus is the first cell. So when the sperm enters the ova and unloads its DNA, and then you get the first cell, and then that first cell has a yin and yang quality. These are not the same as those because they're mixed. And then once you've got, you know, this one cell, it has a yin quality and a yang quality. And so yin and yang is the quality of duality. It's the quality of, you know, it's the first thing that was formed was duality. From duality comes everything. Is the whole material world, energetic world comes from this. Before that, there is only one, the great void, as they call it, or the, you know, the enlightened state, nirvana, or whatever you want to call it, the Tao, or, you know, different people call it different things. It's the same thing because you can't even put it in words. When I used to hang out with Native Americans, they used to call it great mystery. And that was, I loved that, great mystery. I just thought that was perfect way to say it. Okay, so the yin and yang essence, this is the yin essence is called pre-heaven essence. Remember, this is the post-heaven essence. And so the post-heaven essence, you know, is because, I mean, I read that book for like days before I got it, what it meant, you know. Just means the food, the essence you get from your environment, basically, food and air. And this is called the Ming Men, which is the gate of life. And this is the kidney essence, or the ancestral chi, they call it. And this is the Jing that runs in the 8 extra meridians. And this is when the 8 extra meridians, they call them the strange flows, because sometimes they don't flow, they flow both ways and, you know, do different things. Central and governing vessel are a bit different because they have their own acupoints. So they live in both worlds. That's why they've got the Qi and Jing, and it's kind of interesting. And so these together make the original Qi, or the Yuan Qi, that we have to tonify this with. And so what they say is, you know, and I don't know, but anyway, you only get a certain amount of this when you're born, and when you've used it all up, it's kaputski. You're in this earth. You're 6 foot under. Your bucket is being kicked. Do you know what I mean? You're gone. And so this, so using this up is not good. Here, you want to have this really good, so you don't use this. Okay. Interesting, what I didn't realise, and is it doesn't go straight to the 12 meridians. It goes to triple heater first, and then the other 11. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And I don't know what the meaning of that is, but I just like interesting facts. And even if you can keep it for a kinesiology trivia night, there you go. Someone's written, Lisa, Gary Larson cartoon right there with those chatting veggies. That's hilarious, yeah. Okay, so this is kind of the idea, and when I wrote a long time ago, I wrote this book called Sacred Physiology, and I had put this chapter, the modern magic of the Meridian system, in there. That's where I got the name from, and this is something, you know, it's what I find interesting is, you know, when you look at the traditional Chinese medicine and also the traditional Indian medicine, the Ayurveda or the, you know, Vedic knowledge, you know, they're writing all this stuff. You know, you've got these treatment protocols, you know, in China would have been maybe acupuncture or something for conditions, but they had no idea of the physiology. They just did not have the knowledge of it. There was no knowledge of the physiology. I mean, even last century, I mean, they didn't discover receptors until, I don't know, like 30, 40 years ago or something. And there's all stuff being discovered, and then it's all genetics, now it's epigenetics, now it's this, now it's mutating viruses, now it's an immune system, then it's vaccinate, not vaccinate, and all this kind of thing. But what's interesting is that this knowledge of these traditional medicine systems would treat pathologies without any knowledge of the pathophysiology or physiology of the underlying conditions. Now that's interesting. But today we have this knowledge. And this is where I think kinesiology is a very unique modality. Kinesiology is unique because it uses the traditional Chinese medicine knowledge. We use the meridians, the elements, the acupoints. We use the knowledge from India. We work with mudras and chakras, and therefore nadis, you know. And we even combine them, and this is where Richard Utt came in with his, what we now call acupressure formatting. But we can also use the modern knowledge of today's physiology, even using muscle testing and understanding how a muscle test works. You know, which is, to me, it's a neurological event, and it's the muscle test works because there's some stress, and you know, then your amygdala and other parts, they go to the PAG and in your brainstem, and what the PAG does is it actually controls your muscle tone in stress when you're emotional. And so the muscle test is completely a neurological event, and completely neurologically can explain why it reacts to stress and why kinesiology is stress management. I mean, if we called it stress management, like applied stress management or something like this, people probably wouldn't bat an eyelid. Okay, just managing stress. That's what I always say. It's what we do. What's kinesiology? You know, if you want a one-liner, I'll just say it's stress management. We just manage stress, because I get it all the time. People want to know what I do, and they've got no idea, and I don't try to speak much about it. I like giving one-line answers. I'm really good at that. So that's gland mode. And these are some acupoints. And the way I described, you know, like when kinesiology first started out, you know, we would like hold a mode and test an indicator muscle. Perfect. Or we'd hold an acupoint or an indicator point or some reflex point, maybe. You know, like even the Chapman reflexes and the Bennett reflexes, which you know as the neurovasculars and neurolymphatics. There's other reflexes too. There were some neuroemotional ones from some guy, from some chiropractor, and Bruce Dew amplified it a little. He found the missing ones. And John T had his spinal reflexes, and there's quite a few. And, you know, so you could like hold a reflex point or an acupoint and see if there's a change in the muscle. So that means when you do that, you're looking for a change in the stress, because the muscle test gives you a stress readout. But then what Richard Utt did, he started combining the modes and the points and with the formats, and he started this a long time ago. He did his brain workshop, had all these limbic formats. and he did his amino acid ones, and he had these 12 cranial nerves, and I enhanced some of them, but then he left it for his hologram. But it's like he opened this little kind of wedge into the future. Well, for me anyway, because then all my things are built on that. But then, so the idea of a format, what that does is, instead of like like if you, like this is like playing an individual note. Like, you can play an individual note. I've got one here, like this, they ding. But when you do a format, it's like playing a chord, so when you play music, like if you get me on a computer, on a piano, I could play one thing on a piano with one finger. Do, 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 do. And, but it's not like, a musician playing a beautiful melody or symphony or something like this, playing lots of chords. So, and this is, I think I mentioned this the other night, but I like to talk about it. It's like kinesiology. This is, I just did this. This came from me talking with Alexis from Canada. She lives in Costa Rica, and she's a senior SIPS teacher. And we had a conversation the other day, which we both posted on our YouTube channels, about NK and SIPS and how they work together. It's very interesting if anyone uses them or thinking about, or uses one of the modalities and not the other one, how it works. But just to go over it, like a kinesiology balance. So basically, a kinesiology balance, you reveal stress, you diffuse stress, reveal stress, diffuse stress. You've got, basically muscle tests reveal stress. If you do a muscle test, it's test weak, there's stress. Acupressure formats. I always say, acupressure formats are stress revealers. They reveal stress to you. Talking about the issue, goal setting, performing activities, are all ways you'll do a setup or challenge things for balancing. Then you diffuse stress by energetic corrections. Should be physical corrections as well. Oh, I wrote it, physical corrections. Oh, look at that. Blind. And powers of stress techniques. And that was originally thought of by Richard Utt with his stacked spindle cell manipulations. I call it the clack. I don't know what it was really called, but he would Richard Utt, I don't know if anyone out there ever met him. He was this short, stocky, he was like a bear, he's this big, strong guy. And he would like, if anyone got balanced with him, sometimes they had bruises on their arms. He'd like get right in there, and he would just stack if it was over facilitated, because when you got powers of stress, and this was his concept, is when you've got this locked muscle that won't sedate, or you've got it under facilitated when it's like under energy, it's weak and you can't tonify it. And so he would stack the spindle cell manipulations until it came back into homeostasis. And then Ian Stubbings did SIPS and I did MOPS from NEPS. But, when you're using an acupressure format to reveal stress and a SIPS point to diffuse stress, it's how the systems work really well together. And so it's meridian mode. So some meridian formats is, you can do the meridian mode plus alarm point, light touch for over energy. So then you would look at the emotions. So what you have to do is look at the emotions of that meridian and apply, what would that emotion look like if it was over energy? Or if meridian is, if you do alarm point, deep touch, it's under energy. Then you can tonify and sedate. But remember, if it's under energy, it could be under tonified or over sedated. And meridian emotions is your meridian emotion mode, and then the alarm points as well. So Anyway, so this is what I wanted to talk about tonight, and I hope you've got something out of this. And I've really enjoyed doing these free lockdown webinars, even though I've been doing too many other things and doing them in 3 countries at the same time. But, you know, it's been challenging for me, but, you know, it's just something I felt I was driven to do, and we're going to extend it, but I'm not, as I said, I'm not going to do all of them. So thank you very much. And